All right, here we go again, y'all. Another episode of the Clues of Leadership. I am your host, Dominic Waters. And as you guys know, on this podcast, we talk about public safety and the dynamics of leadership and how it's evidence of clues that our leaders leave for us to follow. Today, I have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, a brother of mine. He hails from Southern Maryland in Charles County. He is a first of his, if I'm correct, I think he is the first Latino lieutenant down there. I want to give it up for my friend and my brother, Lieutenant Juan Morales. Hold on, let me get you on here. Here we go. I knew he was going to act up today. There we go.
Thank, Thanks for having me.
All right, hold on. I had to get it right. Like there's always one technical difficulty for me for the day, but we usually get through it. How are you, brother?
I am doing great. I was just surprised when you reached out about this. We've had some great conversations when we first met about leadership and how important it is. So when you reached out, it was just it was humbling as always, and I was excited to see you taking on this new venture.
Thank you for the support and the love, man. This has been a brainchild of mine for quite some time, and like you said, you and I met some time ago, and we talked about leadership. Like we really did. We had a good in depth conversation about leadership and the nuances behind it, and just how to get better. And so I always believe in iron sharpens iron. So I'm even more humbled that you took time out of your busy schedule to hop on here with me. Thank you again, brother.
Absolutely.
So I want to get right into it, Juan. Let's introduce the audience to you. Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing? Like how long you been in law enforcement?
So I'm just getting on 17 and a half years with the same sheriff's office I started with down here in Southern Maryland. Um, had an interesting career. It's had a lot of ups and downs, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's a career that 17 and a half years later, I still love what I do every day. I still have something new and different. There's still new challenges. And I think we talked about it a lot is, we can always be better leaders. We can always look for those better leadership opportunities. But a little bit about me: 17 and a half years, about 5 years in patrol before I became a detective. I did 2.5 years in our criminal investigations division as a property crimes detective, also working alongside special victims, financial crimes, major crimes, and robbery. After that, I came back to patrol as a corporal. It was a great time because after that time in investigations, it really made me a better, well rounded officer. That 2.5 years was just a good portion to make me better, well rounded for to be a more effective patrol supervisor. Soon thereafter, in 2018, I got promoted to sergeant, just under 10 years on the job. And that was where I was so excited because I've always believed sergeants truly make the difference in this profession. They really shape the trajectory of someone's career and really can coach, mentor, develop. Look for those little details when you find out this is what my subordinate wants, and you can really hone in on that and get them started in the right direction. So, about 3 years as a sergeant, I took over our traffic safety section, dealing with our motor unit, crash reconstruction, traffic enforcement, all our Maryland Highway Safety Office grants. And I was in that unit from 2021 till 2023 and came back to patrol as patrol sergeant again. Um, Great stint in patrol. And then in 2024, I was promoted to lieutenant. And about a year and a half into being a lieutenant, I then was appointed as the deputy director for the Southern Maryland Criminal Justice Academy, which is our tri county training academy down here in Southern Maryland that caters to Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary's County. And sometimes we'll get some municipalities that send personnel down there as well. And it is one of those points in my career that was so humbling. When the sheriff chose me for that position, I'd never in a million years thought I was headed there, and just really reaffirmed the trust and confidence he put in me in what I'd been doing and how I have shaped my career, and being able to mold our next generation of law enforcement is really one of those jobs where, we have to take such a humble pride in that, because we really do put their first foot forward in this career. Family history wise, my father was a deputy sheriff of Prince George's County Sheriff's Office, and he did 30 years with them. And, he had some great accolades. He was on their first SWAT team with the sheriff's office. How cool was that when that was a brand new concept? And so when I got into this profession, I had a lot of people go, "Hey, don't you want to be on the team?" I said, "No, my dad, the best thing he did was teach." And he was an instructor for almost, well over 30 years. And there's still current police officers out there today that he taught in the academy, that he taught firearms to, and he left that impact. And being able to do that and be at a point in my career where I can leave that long lasting impact to the next generation, that's where we affect change. That's where we can make a huge difference far beyond ourselves. So I've been 5 months into that role, and it has just been a totally rejuvenating experience. Now, you've known me long enough. I'm always pretty high energy. I get super excited. So that's not a hard push, but it really has been just a new career trajectory that has just left me with new challenges and totally uplifted me. And so that's where life's been.
That's amazing, and we do stay in touch through social media, but we also got each other's phone numbers. And when I saw the appointment, I was like, did he retire early? I was like, what's going on? But now that you explained it, that it's an appointment, that you're still part of the sheriff's office, that makes sense. But I think they have the best person to be in that position because I understand your spirit and what you want to pour into others. You've always been a selfless person trying to ensure that the others are achieving their goals, and you oftentimes have put yourself on the back burner, learning things and doing things. You say, I'll get my turn, and pushing others to go do it. So I am happy for you. I got to get down to the academy now and see what's going on down there.
We're doing good things. We're doing good things down there. Thank you for that.
So, man, that's amazing. So 17 and a half year career, did patrol, you're done traffic, grant management, and now you're full circle. You're taking all of those experiences and pouring it into the next generation of police officers. So we talk about leadership a lot. And so the first question I want to ask you is, what early on in your career did you misunderstand about leadership? Because you're a second generation law enforcement professional. What was something that you thought you understood, but then now 17 and a half years later, you're like, I understand it differently?
Wouldn't say I understand it differently, but my father was always known for take care of your people. I never knew what that really meant. Meant he was good with people, meant they liked him, they appreciated him, they got along with him, they thought he was a good boss. But what did take care of your people really mean? And I think that is something that we kind of get lost in the weeds at sometimes. Taking care of your people is just more than, they have a bad day. So, hey, take a couple hours, leave, go home, take care of your family. That stuff's important. That is absolutely critically important, but it's so much more. Taking care of your people revolves around so many other facets. I think about when I take over a new command or a new squad, I like to sit down with every one of my people. I like to know, what are your goals? What do you want to do with this career? But I also want to know what's important to them. Sometimes it's not the job. Sometimes it's going home and taking care of their kids. Sometimes it's getting ready for retirement and the next job they're looking for. And taking that time for your personnel, there's so much more to it. The term just taking care of your people means so much more. Sometimes taking care of your people is accountability. And oftentimes we're always so, we don't want to be that bad guy. Human nature is we always want to be liked. And when we want to be liked, we sometimes don't, we fear what's going to happen if we have to do something with our personnel, if we have to put pen to paper, which Sometimes we don't have to. Sometimes it is as simple as a talking to of saying, hey, you messed this up. We can't do it. Here's why. One, it makes us look bad in the community. Two, how does that present yourself as an officer? Is that the kind of person you want to be at the end of the day? But we got to be able to get that in terms they can understand that accountability. Sometimes it is that talking to, sometimes it's that paper that says, hey, we got to document this. And sometimes it's better for their protection than anything else. And also, taking care of your people means good communication. I think we can always, every human being can always work on their communication. That communication is sometimes as simple as, you know, what do you need? What's the goal? What are you not getting at work? I think one of the biggest things I ask every one of my subordinates now is, what are your expectations for me? What do you need from a commander for you to succeed? I went to a great leadership class years ago, and they handed down this idea of giving commander expectations. And a lot of people are immediately standoffish. They're like, "Hey, here's my expectations, Captain. I need you to follow these. Take it." And obviously, that's not how you're going to present that. That doesn't work. However, every time I've given these expectations, they have not been met with any animosity. They haven't been met with any problems. And I explained it. I said, "Hey, this is not me slapping this on your desk and saying, this is the my way or the highway. No, this is what helps me best succeed. You can get the most out of me if you can help meet these things that I need to succeed." And I tell you, given those commander expectations, that's a type of communication that a lot of people are not comfortable with giving. And it promotes that openness, it promotes that transparency, and you can really get a lot more out of your personnel. So when they take that seriously, to take the time and say, hey, LT, this is what I need. I need you to be more present during these activities, or this is what's really important to me as my family. So when I can get just time back to go home early because I've stayed late the other day, I'm not looking for leave, I'm not looking for overtime. I just want to be able to cut out so I can watch my kids' ball game from the middle of the shift, maybe 12 to 2. Can I go out of service for those 2 hours instead of, trying to take leave and do all this stuff when I stayed late the other day? The biggest thing is really a struggle sometimes, and it's hard to create that balance, that give and take, and understanding, we give so much in this profession. As a good leader, we got to understand that and recognize that in our personnel. And it's give and take. The personnel got to realize we can't take every opportunity to get one over on the system or get better on it. We have to be able to have that give and take, that good communication back and forth, where personnel and their bosses go, it's give and take. We got to support each other for this to work out. And when we have that good relationship, we're going to have the best team.
You said a lot. But what I
I
took,
do always.
you good. And I just want to dissect it a little bit. And what I get from that is you're a people first mindset. And I often tell people we have competing interests once you get in a position of authority. As someone in authority, I have the patch. I got to protect the agency. Then I got my bosses, my chief, hey, this is what I expect out of my leaders, out of the people that I put in these positions. But then you also have the staff that you have to take care of, that they're looking for you for guidance and everything. You have the citizens, they're looking for a separate thing. You have elected officials. And so we're constantly playing this game of who do I help today? Who do I please today? And like you said, sometimes you gotta be the leader that says, "Hey, I gotta hold you accountable. I'm gonna write you up. It's all love, it's part of the job, but don't do that again." Sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes it's just a conversation. But I often find times, especially now with the newer generation police officers, they value time. They value having that opportunity to make memories with their family. They're not like our generation where when we came in, it was like, oh, it's an open shift. Let me get the open shift. Their mindset
Yeah.
has shifted. And I like it. I do honestly. I think that's one of the things that I take from them. I'm like, if I'm not working, I want to go home. I want to be with my family. I want to, go out with my friends. I want to make memories. I want to travel. I want to do those things, and I think it keeps me balanced. I think it keeps me balanced. I see a lot of people who were cynics because they focused on was the job, the job, the job, and when it came time to retire or move on, they couldn't. They couldn't.
I think you brought up a really good point. It was a really good reminder. We talked about accountability. And I had a boss call me in when I was a sergeant once. He brought me in the office and he says, Juan, I don't get it. You write your guys up and they still like you. Like, how do you do that? Like, what is that? How do you do that?
Hmm.
And, sadly, I laughed to myself a little bit and I said, Lieutenant, that's part of the problem with our culture sometimes is you don't understand that concept. My guys know if they got a piece of paper from me, they earned it. And they knew that I did everything I could to avoid that, that I had given them the tools to succeed. I had reminded them of their tools to succeed. And I had done everything I could to set them up for success. And even when they didn't meet that bar of success and it resulted in that write up, they took their write up. It was in the office. And once the write up was signed, it was done. Once they walked through that doorway back out into the patrol area or back into the hallway, it's done. You want to go grab lunch? You want to go run a call together? That's fine. It's no different. I don't hold a grudge. And that's the biggest thing I think we deal with all the time in our profession is grudges. And the thing is, officers make mistakes. It happens. We make mistakes at the littlest level where we forget to, activate an in-car camera for a minor service call, or it's something that, is far greater. But either way, once it's been addressed, we address it. It's over. Why do I need to hold that grudge? My expectation for my personnel is I have enough respect for them. I expect enough respect for myself that once it's been discussed and hashed out, we're done with it and we move on. And we have that good relationship. And that is where I think we miss the mark a lot of times is once they clear that doorway and we've addressed the issue, we got to move on. We got to continue to expect the best and push them to be their best. We got to still continue to be their coach, be their mentor, be their supporter, and push them to succeed. Just because they stumbled in the race doesn't mean they should give up.
I agree. I agree. Having a short term memory and being able to move on, holding people accountable, but still showing them love. Like, hey, look, it's done and over with. You made your mistake. I'm not harping on it. Let's move on. But with that being said, you've seen a lot of mistakes over your years. You've seen yourself make mistakes. You've seen peers make
Absolutely.
mistakes. You've seen leaders make mistakes. What's one of those decisions that you have made in your career that keeps you up at night? You're like, man, I should have made a different decision. Now that you had time to kind of move past it and get pushing forward in your career. What's one of those decisions that you made? You like, man, I would have definitely made a different decision knowing what I know now.
Well, I think of one where I went through a pretty rough patch in my career. Um, I worked for a boss who he was just non-existent. He didn't want to do the things a boss needed to do. So I was in a position where I was overseeing a lot of equipment that could potentially expire. We worked with a lot of other agencies, and I'd continually go to this commander. And fortunately, he no longer works with us. He's long retired now. Um, but I would go to him and say, "Hey, this equipment's nearing its end of service date. We need to address it." He would complain about the style of report of how we reported on certain incidents. Okay, sir, how would you like us to change this? What do you want? What's the expectation? Do you have any ideas? Talking about other organizations organizational relationships. No, we're not going to work with them, or no, we're not going to do that. And then talking about new ideas. And he would say, no, you're too far ahead of yourself, or, that's too big of a liability, or just plain, we're not doing that. And it got really frustrating because my unit became very stagnant. We couldn't get the things done we needed to get done. We couldn't get ahead. Um, I think in a lot of our different offices and places, long-term logistical planning is always a big complaint. We always go, why didn't we think about this longer? Why didn't we address it sooner? Well, and we try and get ahead of these things, and then you reach that roadblock. Well, that came to a head at about about a year and a half in, and that commander was brought in of what's going on. Well, he tried to leave me holding the bag on that. And it was one of those like, hey, you didn't do your job, you didn't do this, you weren't supervising your personnel, and all these pitfalls, which I love my career. I love what I do. So hearing those words, it was just earth shattering that somebody would even say that. And I ended up getting a disciplinary report out of it. And I'm sitting there at the end of the conference table beside myself going, what did I do to deserve this? I'm doing my job. I'm making the notifications. I'm telling the boss. And everything you're writing down are the things that I told you needed to be done. So I almost felt like, the scapegoat of it all. And I was just devastated career wise. It left me like feeling betrayed, left out, and I was soon after sent back to patrol and just beside myself. Like, what did I do? Well, I collected myself that week, and fortunately, I had kept good documentation of all these things. I'd kept the emails, kept the reports, I kept all these things that said, hey, I was doing my job. And I never in my 14 years at that time would think of ever making a complaint about something. I was always so leery about, I don't want to make a complaint. Why would you ever complain about something? You have a great job, you're doing well, you're still a sergeant. Um, but why would you ever make a complaint at work? Like, you just don't do that. Just get over it and move on. I think a lot of us always got used to that. And I sat down and I said, this wasn't right. And I had a couple days to compose myself. It was a lot for me. And I formed a complaint. And with that complaint, I detailed all the things that I had done that weren't addressed. And long story short, I'd filed that complaint on a Monday. And the following week, that lieutenant came back to patrol with me.
Wow.
So he was transferred out as well.
Wow.
Um, Now, I'd already been transferred. And we don't, in this profession, we usually don't put people back. It
Right,
just doesn't
right.
happen. And that's fine. I came back to a patrol squad and was able to build an amazing team. And we can talk about coming back after that adversity and building a team, which was just what an amazing experience that was. But you eventually get feedback years later, and you get the feedback from those people in those higher positions that they only knew what they knew.
Hmm.
And getting that feedback later, and one of my executive level commanders said, why didn't you say something sooner?
Mm.
I said, well, I went to my next level in my command. He said he would fix it. Well, it didn't get fixed. It was just kind of left alone. He said, well, you should have came to me. And that's tough because how many rungs up the ladder are you ever going to jump to fix a problem? But I think one of the things we got to realize is when it is that bad. And that's tough because there's certain levels, and when does it really get that bad? You have to get to that point and say what is going on is wrong, or someone is not doing their job and you're not getting the whole picture. And So if I learned anything from that experience, one, it was when things are going bad, proper documentation is important. And that's up and down the chain. That's whether you're the boss, that's whether you're being supervised. Is if you're mistreated, you got to keep that on record because we need to be better in this profession. We need to treat people right. We need to be professionals. We need to constantly be pushing everyone around us to be better. And getting that executive level feedback that says, yeah, we might have made a mistake. But
Mm,
unfortunately, you find that out years later. And at
right.
that point, it's already done. But I am thankful every day that I moved on. I kept my positive attitude and I ended up with an amazing commander that has I've worked for several times now. And he was able to highlight the things I did. And I was now seen, I was heard, and I was appreciated for all the things I could bring to the table. And it gave my whole career a 180-degree turn. I didn't change, but my boss did.
I think oftentimes we have those pivotal moments in our career where it's like you can't do it no more. You don't want to. You can't, like you said, you felt betrayed, and it was just like, do I want to be in this profession anymore? If this how the individuals are, there's nobody there to protect me. I went above him and told that person, and nothing was done. Like this is the culture, and all I want to do is do good work and just be recognized for it. But when you don't have that support and the internal culture is that you just suck it up and deal with it because I was taught the same thing. Like I started 16 years ago, and to write up your supervisor, you knew that it was going to be a target on your back. Like you knew the other supervisors were going to
Absolutely.
say, you know what, that individual is a problem because they don't do what we tell them to do. So watch out for them. So you would go to a different squad or a different unit, and you would still be mistreated for something you had alleged to have done or really actually did somewhere else, but no one else was willing to look past that and give you a chance and get to know you. That their perception of you was based on what they heard, not actually what they knew, and that's terrible, man. That's terrible. Good God. So you had that, right? You had this pivotal moment in your career, and it seems like just like life, there are ebbs and flows. Like you had some highlights, and then you got some lows, some valleys. So now you're back in patrol, and a leader. One of the things, like I said in the beginning, as an instructor, you have to pour into individuals. You have to teach them from the ground up and build them up. So now you have to rebuild your team. What was that experience like as a leader, having to go back to patrol, humble yourself because now you're still internalizing what just happened to you, but now you still have to be there for others and build them up? How was that process of building up the team there?
So, it's interesting. Just like any organization, when you get booted out of a unit, there's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of stigma, and there's a lot of questions like, what happened? Well, between my time of getting transferred out and coming back to a patrol squad, I had about almost 4 weeks of unassigned time where I was in patrol, but I didn't have a patrol squad. So, what did I do with my day? I went back to the basics. I went to the core functions of the job I loved. I love traffic enforcement. I love criminal interdiction through traffic enforcement. And I was also a certified commercial vehicle inspector. So I had the free time, and I'm not going to sit around and watch Netflix and, you know, eat junk food all day and just mope and just not feel happy. I'm not going to take time while I'm at a job that I love and just sit around and be sad. I can still do the things I enjoy doing. So I went to those core function things. I went to my traffic enforcement stuff I enjoy doing. Started doing some commercial vehicle inspections. One of those commercial vehicle inspections got some drugs and a gun out of a commercial vehicle. Then headed into work another day, literally on my way in on day work, get another gun out of a car on a traffic stop, and just getting back out there and being active in patrol, embracing those patrol skills, and enjoying how fun this job could be. So then I got assigned a patrol squad, and a couple of them had already heard on the radio or they seen the crime report that, Sergeant Morales, he just made this stop, got a gun. He made this stop, got a gun. He's out there working. So I take over this patrol squad, and I was so blessed because this patrol squad, the majority of it was all prior military. And the only person that was not prior military was a former paid firefighter. We love him too. He's great. Still love him. All jokes aside. Uh, but I said, I sat down with all this personnel like I discussed. I went over, hey, what do you like? What do you need? And I also talked to one of them. I thought it was really interesting. One thing I always impress upon our recruits, anyone I've ever field trained, is we have to win every day. Every day we go out there on the street, we have to win. There are no points for second place. And winning is sometimes it's the fight, sometimes it's a gun battle, sometimes it is you're de escalating that situation, getting that person to the hospital for the help they need. Sometimes it's getting on scene and going, this isn't a police matter. Here's the resource for you, and we're going in service. But we have to win no matter the situation every day. And so I'm talking to one of these officers that's a former Marine, and I said, we have to win every day. There's no points for second place. And he had come from another local agency, and he was a former Marine, and he says, I've never been told that in my law enforcement career that we have to win every day. And I said, but you're told that in the Marine Corps, weren't you? He says, yeah, absolutely. And so we built a bond right there, just understanding that principle. So figuring out what else could we do to bring this team together. We're very fortunate at my department that we get 45 minutes twice a week for gym time. Now, a lot of your military types, they use gym time, especially former deployed people use gym time all the time. They love that. It's part of the lifestyle, it's part of the culture. You got to stay fit. We got to stay fit in this profession. So I had an idea, and I went to my captain. And I said, sir, instead of gym time twice a week for my personnel, I want to be able to do it every working day. We work 10-hour shifts, so we have an overlap period where we're not the primary units. We can do this. And I said, here's the better part. Our personnel are accounted for. They have some formalized gym time. They're not disappearing. Somebody has a radio there. So if something does break off in the county, we're available and everybody knows where we're at. But what's the long-term benefit? We have healthier officers. If we're healthier and stronger, our uses of forces are going to be down. We're going to have less injuries. Our insurance rates don't go up because we're not having more injuries on the job. We are better in our community. We promote a positive presence. But at the end of the day, I build a better team. Because what do I do in the gym? We have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Do we make fun of each other?
Yep.
Yeah.
We
Do we
compete.
have a good time? Yeah. We compete and we push ourselves to be better. And I added one thing onto that because on our evening shifts, our 2 hour or our overlap period is 2 hours. So we could work out for an hour and then we could debrief the day. So if we had some kind of crazy scene or something happened, we could talk about it. So when I first started this idea, and the captain was all on board, he said, Sarge, I can't argue with that. There is no question you have an argument that is, I don't see a fallacy, I don't see a fault with it. Go for it. Let me know how it goes. So the first week, I had about 3 or 4 people show up, and they're showing up consistently, and they're my prior military ones. But by week 2, I had 8 people showing up. And in our northern district, we have 2 squads that work at a time. So now I wasn't just getting my squad, I was getting the other squad. And we were all working out every day together on shift. And talk about a way to build a team just by spending that little bit of time together. Because at the end of the day, in this profession, in this career, if we build a team where people want to spend time together beyond being forced to because they have to show up at work or run a call together, we're doing it right. And that is how that team really started to build. With that team building, we started to run more calls together. They saw me running calls together so they could learn. We were then filling their cup. We were filling up their tank to learn, be that proactive patrol officer, build that intrinsic motivation. And it's contagious. When I went to another shift as a lieutenant, one of my junior officers there said, "Wow, you just came from shift 4. Uh, those guys are just so tight there. Like, I wish we were like that." And I said, "Well, that's where we need to be, and there's no reason we can't be." So yeah, when I came back, I was hurting. I was hurting a lot from what had happened, but I didn't bring that to work. And I'll tell you, those guys did everything for me and more than they'll ever know, just by going to gym time, because that was the outlet. That was it. Running, staying resilient, staying motivated, and getting after it. That carried me through, and that helped maintain the positive personality and persona that everyone sees out of me every day.
Man, that's amazing. We often forget about the wellness portion that has really been, it's always been something that we knew we need to do, but now they kind of have a phenomenon where it's like officer wellness and safety and things like that. And part of your leadership was, hey, let's go into the gym, let's build a bond outside of just running these high stress calls for service together. Let's sit there and see how we can push one another, and just like you said, debrief. Like, oftentimes there's so many critical incidents that happen in a shift that you don't have time to debrief. And I feel like us as leaders need to take that time, because in those moments you give yourself one to be vulnerable, like, hey, that call affected me as well. What are you seeing? Like, what's wrong with you? Do I need to, like you said, do I need to give you some time off? Do you need to regroup? You know, can we learn from it? So we don't repeat the mistakes we made. Just all that time that you invest, all those little things, like you said, pouring into their cup little by little. So when you had to discipline them, it was nothing. Everybody's like, "Hey, look, Sarge, love us. Like, you did this, you earned it, because we know what he's done for us. We know he cares about our health, our wellness. He cares about us being, just not just the officers and producing. And because you cared about them so much, you didn't have to do anything to motivate them. Like you said, it was intrinsic. They felt like this was what they were supposed to do. They loved doing it. And like you said, the contagiousness, it's amazing. I haven't supervised a squad that large in quite a long time. Like, I often wonder, like, if I'm ever given the opportunity to have that type of impact on that many individuals, what could I do with it? I was actually talking with my staff this week, because one of them challenged me to go into the gym. I was like, listen, I know I'm a little out of shape now, but I'm not too far. I'm about 2-3 months out, and you don't want to see me in the gym. So he challenged me, so I started going in the gym. Just this week, I just started going in the gym, and the lactic acid and everything. Like, I'm sore. I should have. I'm like, man, I'm about to be 40. I can't be just hopping in the gym in the wind. But I said, I'm gonna get through this period, but I'm gonna stick it out this time. Just little things. So I told the guys, I can't do 45 minutes, but I'm gonna do 30 minutes. I'm gonna give you 30 minutes to get in the gym. I think you could get a good workout in 30 minutes, and we'll see how that works out. So, trying to figure out ways to just motivate them and bring them together. Um, in a smaller department, because we don't have as large of a force as you guys do. For me, it's the little things to them, like titles, having specialized titles and things like that. Going to training, like you said, hey, I worked overtime last night. You think I could roll out early? I don't want the overtime. I want to go home. I want to be with my family. So balancing that out with the departmental needs is always a juggling task for me in the position I'm in. But I wonder, for you, right? Um, so you had this high, you had this low. Now you're putting the guys in a position where they succeed. You haven't always had this title. So what made you think that you would succeed as a leader if given the authority to be in a position to lead people? Because oftentimes I always say, are leaders developed or are they just born? So for you, how did that process unfold? How did you know you were ready to step into that leadership role?
So I thought about a lot of things. I think what really got me on the leadership track was I had a great district commander. And when I started seeing him on a regular basis, like, hold on one second. There we go. So my district commander was very well educated, really took me under his wing, and really started showing me what a mentor and a coach look like. And I remember going to his office all the time. I would see a master's degree, I'd see a bachelor's degree, and he really inspired me. So, a really good district commander. He took me under his wing, really started coaching and mentoring me, and really showed me what a good leader looked like. Really took care of personnel, motivated me. I remember going to his office. I saw his degrees. He had a master's degree in executive leadership. He had a bachelor's degree. He went to the command and staff schools. All the things that I didn't have any of that. And I said, this is a guy that's doing a great job. He encourages his people to work. And I remember even when he was my sergeant, he said, go out there and work. If all the guys are at the jail, I can run calls. And if they're non emergency calls, they can hold. If you're out there working, go work. We'll take care of it. And he really just showed me what a good supervisor was. He really took care of his people. You know, if you had a family issue, he made sure you were covered. But if you were out there working, he was out there working with you. And it really kind of started my trajectory going more focused on a leadership role. Because at the end of the day, when we think about it, why do we want to promote? Some people promote, they want to make more money, they want the title, they want the authority. But let's be serious. What's the bigger picture? If we promote, that's your opportunity to affect change. That's your opportunity to do it right. That's your opportunity to do it better. That's your opportunity to get that new idea out there that maybe we've been missing the mark on for the last 25 years. That's how we affect that change, is by getting promoted. And we can have such a positive impact on our personnel. And I've said it many times, a lot of organizations, they're getting better from the ground up as people keep promoting. We're getting new mindsets, new mentalities, new ideas that people are thinking in different terms, that they come from a perspective it's just different to us. And there can be a lot of value with that. So I really was inspired by that commander at that time. I mean, he was my sergeant, then he was my lieutenant, and he really kept being a solid mentor for years until he retired, and really started my foot forward in pursuing being a leader in our organization, rather than just being a trainer, rather than just being a patrol officer, rather than just being a supervisor, rather than just being a manager, actually being a leader.
No, and so that goes. There's always a mentor that you look at and say, I can emulate him, and they give me hope, and they pour into me. They give me the ability to believe in myself that I can do this and I can do it at a high level. And so that's awesome that you have found that very early on in your career, that someone would take the time to deposit into you what it is you needed to take the profession forward. I think oftentimes maybe it's just me. I see a lot of people who have the intangibles, but for whatever reason, it could be selfish. I don't want to be in charge of anybody. I don't want to promote up. And I'm like, man, you're doing the department, you're doing the profession a disservice. If you don't promote up, we're going to get somebody that promotes up that, like you said, they just want the money. They just want the authority. They don't necessarily care about the people. They just want to not, have to be the primary person on the call. They want to, have to have the ability to boss people around and tell people, hey, you got to do this because I said so, because I am who I am. I wear this or whatever. And so I'm always trying to identify leadership qualities in individuals that I say, hey, look, you can do this. what I'm doing is not anything difficult. I'm sitting here critically thinking, making decisions based on three factors all the time: uh, my staff, the public, and the governing body over top of me. When, with using those three things, I'm always thinking of what's the best interest of the department and how can I effectively do my job. So, how do you identify people that you know can assume leadership roles in the profession? Like, how do you go about your process of mentoring people since you've been mentored well?
So my big thing is to be available. We never really seek people out to mentor. People need to seek out people they want to mentor them. You want to find that good example. You want to find that picture of what right looks like to you. And you got to find that person that's open to it. Coaching and mentoring can be a lot of work. Sometimes it's exhausting, depending on the day of the week it is. Sometimes it's an easy job. Sometimes it's simple follow ups. But not everyone wants to be a mentor. We always, departments get an idea if they want to start a mentorship program. Not everybody's built to be a mentor, nor does everyone want to be. It takes a certain type of person to have that genuine care, but also finding the person that has the genuine care, but they're successful with what they're doing. So I've always been a person that's very open. My door's always open. I think one of the most humbling things I had one day was I had a patrol officer knock on my door as a sergeant and said, "Sarge, can I talk to you for a minute?" Now, this was a patrol officer I never supervised. And I said, "Absolutely. Come on in, have a seat. What can I do for you?" And he said, "I want you to tell me about leadership." Well, that's a very broad question. I said, "Well, what brings you to my office?" And he says, "Well, I heard you're just the guy. You're the guy. You care about your people. You lead a good squad. Anyone can come talk to you, and you care about people, and I heard you're just doing it right." And that was somebody that we forged a great relationship with. He continues to build on his career. He continues to build on himself as an officer. He recently got uh, got assigned to one of our collateral duty teams on our negotiation team, and he is just a great officer that has continued to grow and excel in so many ways and facets. And sometimes it's just a simple conversation that gets somebody motivated in a positive direction. Um, Sometimes it's just taking the time. Um, but just being available for those people, being able to be available for the conversation. Sometimes you'll never know. I had an officer reach out recently, one that I had very little interaction with. He said, "LT, would you look over my resume for the promotional assessment? I feel like you'd have the good insight on it." Now, I haven't been in part of our promotional process for two cycles now. It's changed a lot. And this officer that I've had very little interaction with overall still said, "I think this guy's doing it right. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. I think he'll help me at least improve in the right direction." And so being able to have that personable nature, that openness, we're approachable. That's the word we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can come talk to me. I'm not going to blow you off. I'm going to give you a genuine answer at the end of the day, whether it's the answer you want to hear, whether it's the answer you do want to hear or not. It's going to be genuine. And it's going to be genuine because it's going to be there to point you in the right direction, or at least what I hope the right direction is in their
Right.
case. But being approachable enough that when you start building as a supervisor, or even that corporal or that informal, senior officer out there, and those officers come to you and go, "Hey, how do I do this? How are you successful with this?" When you start building that and they're coming to you, those are your potential mentees right there. Those are your opportunities. Those are the windows. And what you do with them, and whether you realize that was your opportunity to be that person's mentor, is on you. But just like anything, we got to be better. We got to be those good active listeners. We got to be paying attention. We're in a profession to be trained observers. And sometimes we miss the mark because we're just not paying attention on that day of the week. But those are those opportunities where we can become that coach and that mentor. And that's where we can get those people to be better. I got a call just today, this afternoon, younger patrol sergeant, still pretty new. And he called me just to tell me, he said, I went to that FBI LEDA training for supervisors. It was really good. You were right. I really liked that. It was better than the other leadership training I had. I'm really glad you pushed me to go do that. That's when we're on the right path. We're pushing people in the right direction to be better based on our experiences. And we try and shape that advice we give them based on our experiences so we get them in a better direction, because sometimes our experience is a mistake, and then we shape them in the right direction by saying, hey, I've tried that, this is what happens, you might not want to do that. So yeah, it's a really good opportunity, and just being that approachable person and realizing when you get that feedback, your opinion does matter to somebody. The way you're doing your job, the way you present yourself, that matters, because there is somebody out there in your job, in your organization, that's paying attention and says, that guy's doing it right. Or what we hope for, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, you could be on either part of the spectrum. You could be the one that they don't want to be like, or you could be the one that they want to emulate. Um, and so understanding that you keep yourself available and approachable when there is people that are seeking you out. Um, we often find that the crisis that happens, whether it's a critical incident, a fatality, a holdup, or a standoff, or something of that nature, or even, God forbid, the worst, the school shootings. So I'm sure there's been a crisis in your career that you had to manage the scene. How did you use your leadership skills to get that scene to be handled appropriately? And what did you learn from that scene?
I actually want to break it down a little bit, and sometimes it's a very simple scene. This was a scene in Waldorf where a child was missing, and it wasn't anything. It wasn't a school shooting. It wasn't. We had a child that was missing, and we had officers responding. We had people hysterical, and we eventually found out that child had fallen into a pool, and it was a very young child. Officers had jumped into this pool. It was full of algae. They couldn't see into it. They were just feeling around with their hands. And these officers jumped in there and pulled this young child out, performed CPR. Child was eventually flown out. And it was a sad scene. It was a sad scene because two of the officers were on field training with their field trainers. And talk about traumatic. You're just starting your career and you're doing CPR on a child. And at the end of the day, the child did not survive. And we ran that scene. Everyone did everything they were supposed to do. And we got done. And wellness is still a very new concept in a lot of ways. And I said, we need to sit down. We need to chat on this before everyone goes home tonight. Unfortunately, it was on evening shift. We had our overlap, and I had some people come from Fireside because they've been a lot better with embracing CISM and crisis intervention and wellness a little sooner than we have. So I had their CISM team come out. They were very, very good. They came out, and of course, in our profession, we don't want to talk about it, and I get that. I really do. I come from a family of police officers that were police officers starting in the 70s. We just didn't talk about our feelings. However, I see there is value in it. And I think the most important thing on that scene was I was a lieutenant in this SISM debrief, and I sat down with my personnel and I said, This is the culture. This is where we're headed as an organization. Whether you'd like to talk about your feelings or not, this is going to be the new normal. And it matters because we do care about you. And you need to see a commander sitting out here that says, this matters. I'm not sending you to this CISM meeting. I'm going to be here with you. And I'm going to let you know that the organization cares about you. And this is where we're going to be. It's going to be a common fixture. Now, there were a couple things I had that meeting set up, and I didn't have a lot of time to prep. But I had one person on my squad, on my shift at the time, and I said, "Oh, he doesn't want to be here.
There's
He
always
is
one.
that guy. This stuff is just there's always one, right? And he's the guy
Hmm.
that I don't want to see. I'm not involved. I'm fine. I don't need to be here. This is all the things, right? Now I have a great rapport with this guy. I've been there since he started his career. I sat on his oral board. I was at his graduation. I was his patrol sergeant, and now I'm a lieutenant. And I met with him before this system meeting. I said, "Look, I just need you to be present because you're training one of these trainees right now. He has not had deployments overseas. He hasn't been in combat. He hasn't seen the things you have seen. And you process it differently. You get help in your own way and all those things, and that's fine. But I need you there so that he sees this is okay. That it's okay to go to these things and that it's gonna be normal." And he begrudgingly said, "Oh, okay, LT, I'll go." But we had our CISM meeting. It went well. Few people said a few things. We moved on. But what was the feedback the following day? Well, that guy said, "Well, LT, you were right. It's not my thing, but I needed to be there for them." But then, even better, I'm driving home that night and I get a chat message in our CAD system from one of the other people present. And he's also a military vet that's been deployed multiple times. And he says, "LT, nobody's going to tell you this, but I'm glad you had that. I'm glad you had that meeting. I'm glad you cared because that means a lot." And I'll tell you right now, that's where our culture has to be. That's where our profession needs to be. We talk about wellness, we talk about peer support, we talk about all these things. These are things we should be doing already. When you're that good supervisor, when you're that good leader, you already care about people. You're already working for them. You're already working to make them better. You're already paying attention to the signs when they're in trouble. These aren't new concepts. We're just formalizing them now. So that wasn't a chaotic scene, but it was one of those scenes that really mattered. It was one of those scenes that really showed the value of paying attention to your personnel and how important wellness is and how much that can be appreciated. It's not necessarily just, you know, saying I really care about you. It's those actions that show you care.
Yeah, I think oftentimes, like, again, people lack compassion, right? You often, because we came from that culture, like you said, we didn't talk about our feelings. We handled the scene. All right, let's clear everybody. Let's go. Next call. And that was the culture. And so for us, breaking out of that and making the new norm, hey, let's discuss this. Let's debrief. Let's, do you need additional resources? Do you need time off? And make that the norm now breaks the stigma of what we always had a taboo feeling about. And like you said, you realize it's necessary. Leading with compassion is necessary. We don't always have to be like the generation before us. So, you lead in crisis, you lead when you're sad, you lead when you're happy. What is your leadership style? Like, what do you I know we all use multiple ones, but when you have to rely on that go-to leadership style, what is it for you?
Well, I think servant leadership's a good way to put it. I mean, the books are out there, they tell you all about it, but the one thing I have always professed to be a leader these days. we have to care. And we have to care about five things. Those five things, we have to care about our personnel, we got to care about the mission, we got to care about our organization, we got to care about our community, and finally, we got to take that little last ounce of time to make sure that we embrace that self care. Because if we are not taking care of ourselves, we cannot lead our personnel and we cannot care about all those things that matter. But those five things, I have to care about those five things every day as a good, effective leader. I have to have that awareness on every one of those facets to be effective. And that is what I base my leadership style on, is care. And it is firmly embedded in that ideal of just the five pillars of care.
Again, with compassion, your heart for people, your heart for others and serving others, which is why you identify mostly with serving leadership. And, you know, I tell people it's not a right or wrong answer for the type of leadership that you resemble or you relate to mostly. It's how effective you are with that style. I think we're long gone out of the days of the autocratic do as I tell you to do because I say do it. But we all know there are times where we just, hey, there's no time for me to discuss it with you. I need you to do this. Go do it. Um, and we understand when we have to utilize that skill set. But if I'm a new supervisor and I heard you said you were mentoring somebody, you reviewing their resume, because you make yourself accessible. But if you wanted to give a piece of advice to a new officer who is thinking about, hey, I want to step into a leadership position within my department. What should I do? What books should I read? What training should I go to? How should my mindset change? Because what I often identify is people think that because today you are an officer and then tomorrow you are the corporal or the sergeant, that now everything has changed. And I think oftentimes they don't prepare themselves, or the department in that fact doesn't prepare them well enough to put them in that position. What kind of advice would you give to someone that's stepping into that first leadership position?
Well, I think you did hit the nail on the head really well. Is our profession is still trying to develop future leaders and figure out how do we do that. And the military does it really good. They have a stair step approach of, you have your basic non-commissioned officers courses, you have your senior, you have your captain's career course, you have your command and staff college, your general officers, all these schools that at every point in your career we continue to build. And the military, I thought, really does a good job. You read the books on how they do it, and it's just a continual educational experience. And if you're that new officer and you want to step into that leadership role, first, every day, ask yourself, are you setting the example? Are you being the best you can be? And sometimes it's as simple as, do you gossip in the roll call room? Should we? No, we need to be better. Are you backing that person up on the call? Hopefully you are. Hopefully you're helping them out when you back them up. Hey, do you need me to fill out a property sheet? Do you need me to fill out that tow card? What do you need? Start figuring that out. Figure out, how do you build people up, because they're going to be your teammates at the end of the day. So build people up. But one of the other things is get educated. That doesn't mean a formal degree. I think those are good. I think they help critical thinking. I think they help outside the box thinking. I think they improve your writing skills, organizational skills, and other broad academic topics. They're great. Sure. Go finish your bachelor's, finish your master's. You should. Those are good things. They do improve you. Go to Liberty University, get your master's in executive leadership. It's a great program. You learn a lot. It helps improve you. But then find the law enforcement training. I am a big fan of FBI LEDA. I've done the trilogy. I was recently asked last year to beta test the FBI 5-star chief course. So I got to be the part of the first class to complete that and write the review on that course. And that course was built for aspiring and current chiefs of police. And it was a really interesting course because the people in that room, there were chiefs, there were sheriffs, and then there were, you know, junior commanders and executives there as well. So it's really broad, but they're taught by people that are chiefs of police. They're taught by three-star generals. A.C. Roper, who was not just a chief of police, but a general in the army at the same time while he's the chief of the Birmingham Police Department. How do you work? How better to learn from somebody who can balance those two things at the same time and still be married to the same woman his whole life? I
Well,
mean, you want to talk about an amazing man.
when does he come?
Stu-
Does he come in week 1 or week 2?
He was in both weeks for me.
Oh, I got to talk to somebody. So I just did week 1. Last was it last week? Last week I just did week 1 because I saw again me following your page, and this is what people don't even understand. I observe leadership from a distance too. Like I may not even say nothing to you, but I see. I said, "Oh, Juan is beta testing this." I said, "Cause I remember when we were going through the trilogy at that point in time before everybody had really started to it became popular and people started to really take it." And I saw you beta testing. I said, "I'm taking this class. I gotta find out when it's going to happen." And I'm in the second actual class out of the beta testing. So
Awesome.
I am looking forward to it. The first week was amazing, like you said. Just we had two chiefs teaching the first week for us, and I mean, as you know, FBI leader, just the discussions alone. Oh my God! If you could be in that classroom, we were going at it. I'm in there, 16 years in, but it's a 39-year veteran who's a chief in there in the class, and he's telling his view. And if you can't tell people, I have a beard, and we all know historically police officers have not had beards. It is not professional in some regions of America. And so one of the big topics was generational leadership. And I said, you guys won't let go of the beard thing, but how does this make me less professional? How does it change my acumen for the job, my knowledge of the job, the way I lead my people? The beard is not help holding me back. I said, now you prefer I be clean shaven, but it is not stopping the job. And when they looked at it like that, I said, you guys are arguing about semantics and wondering why you can't recruit people. And they was like, wow, I never looked at it like that.
Now let's talk about that. That's a good point you just said right there. And it was funny because week one of the five-star chief course, I saw an opportunity and I took it. And this profession right now, we have so many executives complain, oh, we can't get good people. We can't hire good people. We can't find anyone. And so I had the opportunity in class and I looked around and I said, a lot of you are chiefs, senior level executives for your departments. You all are having problems with recruiting, right? You can't find people and they're all shaking their heads yes. And I said, I got a question for you. I said, are you putting your best and brightest in your recruiting section or is it just the nice guy? And they started to look around and I said, hey, let's talk about this for a second. I'm just going to give you a good metaphor. Let's say your ship is sinking. It's going down, there's a big hole in it, the ship is sinking. Are you going to send your best and brightest people to go to the kitchen and bake a cake or make dinner? Or are you going to go send them to go plug the hole? Because what's the priority at the end of the day? We need people. We need bodies. We need people to run sectors. We need people to run service calls. We need people to be active in our community. So if that is our crisis in this profession right now, is your organization putting the best and brightest into your recruiting effort?
Hmm.
And a lot of them, I tell you, we went on break shortly thereafter, and about 4 or 5 of them come up to me and go, huh, I didn't really think about that. How do you not think about that? How do you not think about that? Every conversation, we can't get good people. We need more people. We know it's our biggest problem,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but we're not putting the emphasis on it. Yeah, it might hurt to put people into that area or into a recruiting section, but if we do it right, is it going to pay back tenfold?
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Yep.
I put people in a recruiting section that care, that are tenacious, that are outgoing, personable, they're my best, we're going to turn it around. But
Wow.
that I thought was pretty thought provoking when we got on the topic of recruiting, because it was one of those like they smack themselves on the head and go, well, gee, why didn't I think of that? And to me, it was one of those things I'm like, this is so readily apparent and in front of you right now. This is your problem. If you get somebody murdered in your community, who do you want investigating it?
The best
The property
detective I
crimes
got.
detective or the 15, 25-year homicide detective that could find anything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Who would you want? You want the best. And so if you have that problem, you're going to go after the best. So, yeah, when you brought up recruiting, I thought about that. And I said, that is one of those things. That's where we can do so much better now.
And just
But
think about this,
definitely,
right? We're in a
okay,
class where we're not the most senior members of this class. Like you said, you're in there with a general and a chief of police for a department, for a large metropolitan department. And then in this class, there are other chiefs of police and sheriffs of their departments. And even now, you're bringing ideas to them like, why wouldn't you put your best in this position? If this is the crisis we're having, put the best person on it to solve it.
right?
I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of that. Now I don't have a recruitment problem. Mine is usually, in Maryland we have just so many competitive departments, such as yours, where people look like, oh, I can go to this department, make a lot more money, have a lot more opportunities because they are large. They have more specialized units, more opportunities to go up in promotions, and you know, I can do that. Um, that's you. That's my problem. Are you guys having a recruitment problem down there, or you guys got y'all pretty full?
We are at a point with my department where we have to grow.
Oh,
It's not just filling bodies, but now we have to grow as a department. We have to grow to fit the needs of our community. We need to grow from the numbers that we have maintained since the late 90s, and now we need to grow by about 50 officers.
ooh,
So that's a whole issue within itself. But then we also have a lot of officers that were part of the 90s hiring, and they're all retirement age now. So we have to fill those spots as they come through.
mm-hmm.
So it all comes to a head sometimes, and on top of all the other things that we claim as the driving force of why we can't hire good people, sure, we have those things too. But at the end of the day, there's still plenty of people out here that want to do this job. There truly are. And there's a lot of good people out there. It's just, do we go after them? Do we go look for them? And do we actually put the effort into recruiting them? Not advertising, not telling them how good the department is, but actually showing them care and going out there and recruiting them and bringing them to us.
Man, I could talk to you for hours. But I want to respect your time, so I got two more questions for you. I got two
Oh,
more questions for you.
absolutely.
Who is the guy behind you on your shoulder in that very, very, very nice army suit? Yes.
So this guy right here, oh, other way. Um, this guy was a general, and he started his career prior, or actually during the Spanish American War. He enlisted in the army. He was in the Mexican border campaign, went into World War One, where he went from major to colonel in 2 months. And then after World War One, he eventually became the uh, adjutant general for the New York State Guard, where you see he's a one-star general. I've actually got his name. I got it over there in some of my documents, but I love military history, and every once in a while I run across a really cool piece of military history like this oil painting. I just thought it was just they were gorgeous. I mean, they made this in probably around 19 uh in the mid late 30s for this guy, and they put a lot of good artwork into that back then, doing those large oil paintings. So when I came across it, I said, that is just really cool. Really works well for the dining room. Can't look more formal than this guy.
No, I like it. I like it. And so my last question is, when your leadership journey is over, what do you hope people will say about how you made them feel?
Valued, heard, appreciated, and I push them to be better. I think one of the things I really enjoy when somebody talks about my father being a good instructor was he was so patient. He took the time and he got me through. And patience is a real thing because we have to realize our personnel are not going to succeed the first time every time. And those good people that we see those positive attributes in, sometimes we have to be patient with them. We have to continue to push them. We have to continue to see the good in them, help them see the good in themselves sometimes when they're beaten down. Because resiliency, as much as we use that buzzword, it's a real thing. We have to build that resiliency with people. Sometimes that is helping them find those healthy habits. Sometimes it's being that good ear they could talk to. Sometimes it's being in the gym with them. Um, you never know the impact you will have on people um, far after you're gone. And hopefully, when it comes to my legacy that I've left, hopefully I push them to do better. Hopefully I push them to be an example, push them to be an example, lead, and then help develop others because they thought what I was doing was the right way to do it. So hopefully a lot of positivity. We can always hope, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think you'll have that impact, bro. I just know it because I know your heart. I know what you put into other people. Um, and like I said, even when you don't think it, someone's looking at you. Like I'm looking at you, and I'm learning from you. And this conversation has helped me learn a lot. A lot of things I'm going to take away and implement myself, and a lot of ideas that I'm going to use myself, and hopefully I can teach somebody else. So thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. I appreciate you, brother. I pray all is well. You stay healthy, and anytime you need me, I'm always here.
Same here. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this. I think you hit the nail on the head. We could talk for hours, and we could continue to dissect the leadership dilemmas in our profession. And it is always just you got to find those people that fill your cup, and just having this conversation, this back and forth, that'll have me powered through the week. I'll probably reflect on it, think of some other things that, man, I wish we talked about that. But this was just great. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you. And don't worry, we can always have a part two. So, guys, if you like what Lieutenant Morales gave you today, please make sure that you like and subscribe and share this with somebody. There are law enforcement leaders out there looking for the knowledge to level up and to be better leaders. And we want to help the next generation. So, don't forget to follow us at Clues of Leadership on YouTube and all your podcast streaming platforms. And also check out my website, evidenceleadershipgroup.com. You can find a lot of information on there. I do weekly blogs, and I just put out so much content. I'm on all your social media platforms: TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm there. So thank you again, and y'all be blessed.